Do you support Donald Trump?
Yes.
Okay, why do you support Donald Trump?
I think we share a lot of the same views. I have a lot of conservative views, and
Oh, I can't hear you while you swipe out of the app, just letting you know.
oh, I didn't swipe out. Can you hear me?
Yes, I hear you now.
Okay.
You share some of the same views? What views would that be?
I like that he's pushing people more towards not leaning so much on government assistance, but gaining more independence and joining the workforce and being a part of their community.
Okay. I actually think that the policies he's advocating for are really bad. So if we look at the Big Beautiful Bill in particular, it's going to cut over 420,000 children
Hmm.
off of their free school lunch and breakfast every single month on average. I don't think that children are the ones that should be leaning on, taking care of themselves and not relying on governmental assistance. I
Hmm.
think that children should eat and should be able to rely on governmental assistance in that context, and shouldn't have to worry about
Yeah,
working.
I could see why you see that. I think the bill is going to do more towards like qualifications towards getting those programs. So people that just use those programs that aren't qualified for those programs will get cut off those. But when it comes to kids eating school lunch, there's a lot more resources than just like SNAP and EBT and the school lunches. Like I've used resources in my own community. There's free food, mobile distributions. There's a lot more options. The parents just have to go and get them. It's easier to collect money than it is to go pick up stuff, but like there are more options than just that.
Well, they changed the qualifications so that less qualify. So that's essentially the same as cutting people off of it.
Well, yeah, there are going to be people that qualify less, and that's going to drive people to go out into their communities and get more jobs and do more things.
But should children suffer because of that? Like say their
Children
parents.
won't suffer because of that because there's food resources out there for
Okay.
everybody. I've used them myself, and a lot of them are through churches or like community distributions and things like that. But like I can say I never went on EBT, and I was using food resources for months.
Where are they supposed to get food at school though? Should Are they supposed to go to the church before they go to school,
Well, their
and then they
parents
go
can easily,
after?
yeah, get food. Where do you get groceries from? My kids pack lunch every day at school and they have food. They don't not have food because they don't have school assistance.
Well, it is the case that there are lots of children out there that wouldn't have food to the same degree if they do not have the free school lunch and breakfast.
Yeah, but you can also have these mobile food things to come to your house and drop you off groceries as well. There's community food pantries
And where
everywhere.
and where are the kids going to get money for that? Where are
No,
the
it's
kids going to
free.
get? Oh, it's okay.
It's free.
So
It's all free
they have free
food.
free delivery food.
Yeah, they do for mobile food pantries. Anybody that's listening that is struggling with food, I really encourage you to look up mobile food distribution. You can either drive up with your car and they'll load your entire trunk. You can get free groceries. The food pantries in your community, most of
Which
them have
takes
no
hours to go
qualifying
through, and
factors.
that's them relying on their parents. So again, given parents don't
Well,
do the due
kids
diligence that we
rely
would
on
want,
parents to eat. They don't go to the grocery store
of
and
course.
buy their own food, you
Exactly, that's
know?
my point. That's my point. And they should be able to rely on food being there for them while they're at school because they have to go to school either way. They're going
This
to be
is
at school
limiting
for a
a
long
certain
period of
amount of
time.
people. It's not limiting everyone, Parker. It's just limiting a
420,000 children
certain
per
amount.
month?
That's not all of them.
But
It's
that's a
changing
lot.
the qualifications.
But that's a lot of children I don't think should be harmed.
Okay, but not every single person can be on assistance. We need to gain independence and go back to work. I guarantee, do you believe, can I
Children?
ask you a question? Do you believe fully that all those parents aren't qualified to work or are disabled and can't get a job?
No, I never said that every single one of the parents are. Just regardless what happens with the parents, I don't think that the children should suffer. Now, if we want to
So,
talk
what do
about
you
the
think
parents,
would
there are a
be,
lot of
what,
parents that are specifically disabled that have not qualified for disability that would lose
mhm.
access to their particular goods and things that they need, right? Because it is the case that they can't go out and get a job to be able to work for it.
I think that that won't be the case for most of them. But what do you think would be a good solution to getting people off assistance that don't need it? So I'm talking about the people that don't need it that are just using it. Like, what would you say? Because I've met a lot of people. I have a lot of family members that use it that don't need it, and I frown upon that. It's so easy to get sometimes that people just fake the qualifications or do this and that, and they just have it, and that's not fair to the people that work. So what do we do to try to get people working, and what would you do?
Yeah, so this is a baseline for everyone. Everyone gets this
Mm-hmm.
baseline, and it allows for people to have the say like they know that they're going to be okay, right? They don't have
Yeah.
to worry about thinking that they might starve to death, that they might not have basic access to shelter and housing, right? I think that
Hmm.
these are baselines should be provided for everyone. How do we get people to
But
stop
by the
relying on the
government,
government? So,
because
well, let me please explain. How do we get people to move forward and to not rely on the
Mhm.
government, right? In any circumstance? Well, that's just not the case for anyone. We all rely on the government to some degree. We're not completely independent. We live in a society and we're dependent upon each other. And the government is part of that society that we depend upon, right?
So
So
what
the idea
in
that we're
what
going to just
aspects
gain
do you rely on the
independence,
government?
yeah, like school, K through 12 education. I went through public school. I relied on the government. The public
Okay, I
roads that I
don't.
drive
Me and all
on,
my friends don't use education system. So
you
like
did,
not
you did.
everybody relies. I was homeschooled.
Okay, so you've never used public roads.
No. Well, okay, public roads is different. Like, yes, you pay taxes in your city, but you're saying like using government resources as in like applying for these special programs. That's different.
Well,
That's
well, I just,
different.
well, again, everyone can use this. It's a baseline for everyone, and it's something that we're dependent upon from the federal government. That you don't have an issue with us being dependent upon from the federal government. You're not
I
advocating
think
for
it's
us.
for
You're
a
not advocating
need.
for us to gain independence from the police. Are you advocating to defund and abolish the police?
That's just different. We're talking about food for children. Like those resources are available. There's
Yeah,
housing
but like, why should I have to
and
pay for your
those things
protection
available.
if you're not going to pay for people's food? Or why should you have to pay for their protection?
Why should you have to pay for people's food? There's so many resources to get food.
Yeah, there's so many resources to get protection for yourself. So then, why do you have to pay for other people's protection?
What are you even saying?
Yeah, like police. Why do you have to pay for other people's protection?
Well, the police are a service to the entire community,
Exactly.
but you don't need a police officer to eat, Parker. We're talking about food for children.
Yeah, so like again, there should be food for children regardless, right? That's what I'm
Well,
saying.
there
And the
is what
same
I'm saying.
reasons,
You're acting like it's so
the
much being
same
taken
reasons that you want to
away.
protect and the same reasons you want to protect the safety of others in terms of them not getting hurt by other people. Well, you also want to protect the safety of them in terms of them making sure that they have enough food, right?
Yes, but
That's
their parents
safety.
also protect them. You're acting like the police are the only people protecting you. You can protect yourself. You can protect your
Well, it's
family.
both. It's
Protection from your
both, right?
neighbors.
Yeah, yeah. You could just make
But
the
those are
argument
that's
that
the
you
thing.
don't want to pay for the police.
The
You could make
police are in certain circumstances as well, right? You're not going to call the police every day when you need
sure.
protection.
I'm not claiming that. It's certain circumstances
So
in terms of
that's
your need for food too. But like if you want to talk about the police, right? You could
mhm,
say in the same type of argument, using the same type of reasoning that you are using, that oh, you don't want
mhm.
to pay for other people's security and protection, and that their parents and their family can provide it for them.
No, I want to pay for the people that need protection in the circumstances you need protection, like a normal circumstance. You call the police. I
Because
want to pay
you
for
don't
the
want them
kids
to
that need food.
you don't want harm
Well,
to
you
come
pay
to
for the
them.
kids that need the food, need the services. It's here for us all, yes. I'm saying, but we also need to all contribute and not be solely dependent on these resources. So there has to be some things that happen to drive people into working in independence.
Okay, here you have a decent point here. Solely dependent. Yeah, we're not advocating that everyone just solely relies on the government and doesn't work at all. That's not what we're advocating
Exactly.
for.
So we
But
agree.
these safety nets are safety nets. When you
Mhm.
fall, it's
Have
there to
you
catch
used
you.
any of these
Can I
resources
please?
for yourself, or have you used any of them? Have you ever like applied for them or used any of those?
No.
Do you know the process to any of them?
Yes.
No, like have you filled out the forms and talked to the people and
I
applied for
haven't
the
filled out
things?
the forms myself. I don't qualify. I've never
Okay,
qualified
so
in my
but you
life.
know you don't qualify for it.
Yes. But yet I'm still
So
advocating for it for
you
other
feel like
people.
you need it?
No.
Okay, well
I
you don't
don't need it,
qualify
but
for it
I'm
and you don't
willing to
need it.
pay for it for people who do need it. That's the issue.
Okay, but couldn't that be from a different resource other than like EBT? Couldn't it be for like a community food bank?
But
Couldn't you donate there?
the reality is that if we don't have governmental structures that exist that be able to provide this, me just doing it myself is not enough. We need the entirety of society to be on the same type of on the same page. And this is such a small portion of the budget. If you want to cut the budget in any way, don't go after children having access to food. Go after the millionaires and billionaires having tax loopholes and huge, massive tax breaks from millionaires and billionaires, the subsidies going to big fossil fuel companies, right? You should go after that. Go after the Department of Defense. The fact that we haven't passed an audit in like over 10 years. We need to look at that. The trillions of dollars that have gone where we have no clue where they've gone. That's what we need to be looking at in terms of waste spending, not children having free school lunch and breakfast. That's ridiculous. Where are our priorities as a community? Is it taking away food from children, or is it for providing things in which people need it? I think it should be
I think
providing
it's
things for
doing
people
both
who
at
need
the
it.
same time. I think it's building people up and still having the resource, but it's like there's a line. I get where you're coming from too. But I think there's just a line and nobody knows, you know? There has to be things that go into policy and see what happens and then yeah. I don't think as many people will be as hurt as you do. I think you're thinking of like everyone's going to starve now, and I disagree.
So are you saying that like you shouldn't be relying on society as a whole?
I think you can rely on society in different ways, not just like through the government. I think you can rely on your community.
And do you think that we should do it through government though, like to some degree?
I think in certain circumstances, but what do you think that circumstance would be?
Like, I mean, the children who are going to lose access to their food. I mean, I like
Why
think about
don't
it
they
this
have
way.
food, you think, in the first place?
Why do they not have food? Because their
Yeah.
parents probably couldn't afford it.
Okay, so their parents can't afford it, right? So, like, what should their parents do?
I think that their parents, right? Obviously, you could say they could do things to be able to make more money to be able to bring food to the house, but sometimes there aren't things that they could do. So they should get resources that they need to be able to feed their children.
Okay. I get your point. I just think it's overused.
Well, then again, like the idea that it's overused, I can understand that you think it's overused, especially by those that don't actually need it.
Do you
But
think it's
for
overused
but
at
for
all?
well, there are people using it that don't need it, right? And there are people committing
So, how
fraud.
do
But
we
it's
get those
can I
people?
please finish? But there's a very small portion of it, and there's only so much we can do to limit that fraud from existing. So the overall benefits that we see from these programs heavily outweigh the small level of fraud that exists within any of these programs. Because again, with all these different programs, yes, there will be small levels of fraud, but that's illegal, and we do hold people accountable when they do commit fraud.
Gotcha. I just think we're saying the same thing.
Okay, well, let me keep going then. Under Kamala Harris's policies, you would have seen
Mhm.
tax cuts for people whose income is under $400,000 a year. All the tax cuts under the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act would stay under the Harris administration for income under 400,000, and she would increase it on income over $400,000,
Do you
only on
think
the
that would
income
make
over
parents buy
400K.
groceries? Do you think the money would be going to their kids, though? You think all that money would save kids from not eating lunch?
Well, if there's an increase to the child tax credit, like Kamala Harris was advocating for, parents that have children would
How
have more
much?
money to be able to feed their children. $6,000
How
for the first
much?
year of a child's life, 3,600 through them being 5 years old, and 3,000 through them being 18.
So you think $3,000 will feed them for a year?
It will help them. It's a child tax credit to
I
help
don't
them
think
out.
I don't think the tax credit itself would fix it. Do you?
I'm not saying it fixes it, but I'm saying it makes the conditions better,
Help.
and it would also make the conditions better to have have the access to free school lunch and breakfast there rather than getting rid of it. Have the food stamps rather than getting rid of it, and have the Medicaid rather than getting rid of it. Kamala Harris would not have cut any of these programs.
I see what you're saying. I just think that alone doesn't fix it, you know?
Well, you could say it doesn't fix it, but it makes it better, right? Again, we're not arguing that Kamala Harris is going to come
Hmm.
into the position of presidency and that she was going to fix everything wrong with our society. That's not the claim, right? The claim is that it's going to make things
Well, I
better
never said
as a
that.
comparison to Trump.
Yeah. Why also do you not agree with Trump?
Well, he was held civilly liable. He bragged about walking to the changing rooms of naked women without their consent while they were changing.
Other than like these character things, what else? Like I'm talking like
Well, I think those are incredibly important things. But if you want me just to address,
not based on if we're not looking at him as like this person, but like the policies and things he's doing. I'm not saying I'm not looking at him as a person, but I've heard you make that argument a lot of times. So like I feel like everyone here
it's
already knows
important, right? It's
the same
important.
thing.
I mean, I don't think that we
Yeah,
should
but you can
support.
easily say that you can easily disagree in like this
Well, I mean,
in
if
that
you
way.
have no problem with voting for a violent, right, we can talk about the context of everything else in terms of the policy. That's fine. He doesn't
So
believe in
your
climate.
view basically is you think he's like a that's the sole reason you didn't vote for him.
Well, that's one of the reasons. He's by definition a violent. Yes, he was held civilly liable of
Yeah,
Eugene
so
Carroll. That means he's a violent.
how come they didn't find him? How come it was
Because the
because she
jury,
claimed it was?
yeah, because the jury specifically was judging based upon the law at the time that existed, and the law at that time existed only said that it was in the context in which it against her will, and in this context, we think any against her will is, and because it is the case that she didn't know whether or not it was the or his fingers or both, that it is the case that it was considered under the law at that time, but under the law
So it
now, it
couldn't
would
be
be
claimed
considered
as that.
under the law right now. It's considered rape. The judge themselves said that E.G. and Carroll was in fact by Donald Trump. That's what the judge said, based upon the colloquial usage of the term. It's just language that we're using, and based upon your own definition of the term, right, you would agree that it meets that criteria. Would you like to define it for us, or like, would you say that any against her will is?
I just think in the place, it's really hard to say that people did things when you're not a part of it. You know what I mean? It's
What do you
like
mean?
you can't really believe one side or the other, especially because it wasn't without, what is it, reason, like unreasonable doubt, or like, what is it when they can't all agree?
Beyond a reasonable doubt. I mean,
Yes.
there was a unanimous decision in the civil court. The reason why it wasn't in a criminal court is because of statute of limitations, meaning it's been too many years since the event occurred that regardless of the level of evidence, they could not try it in a criminal court. They should be able to try it in a criminal court, and the fact that they can't is because of our laws that exist that limit victims from being able to hold their abusers accountable after a certain period of time. So we agree that that law shouldn't exist that restricts her from being able to try him in a criminal court, but the fact that he was held civilly liable unanimously amongst a jury of 9 people in a civil court is really good reason to believe that Donald Trump did this, and it's not something that you should just overlook. I will talk about other policies that Donald Trump supports that I think are horrible, because there's so many things to talk about that are so horrible that he supports, but it's not something you should overlook.
I think just like how long she waited and all the things, it's really hard to say.
Many
So,
victims take decades to come out, right? And you wouldn't say that just because they took decades to come out
well,
that it
it's
didn't
like if
happen to
they,
them, right?
in those cases, they take decades to come out, but there's not like a famous person involved, pretty much. You know what I
Why
mean?
does it
It's like
matter
there's
that
no,
there's this is the type of reasoning involved that allows for
because how
famous
much money did
and
she get from that case? You know,
only because Trump
the
defamed her.
defamation case was like
because
millions and
because
millions of
Trump
dollars.
Trump kept defaming her.
I think with the motivation,
She
it's
was
just
already a millionaire. By the way, she was already a millionaire, right? And the reason why it couldn't be in a criminal case is because of the shitty law that exists. So she
I
wasn't
understand
just
where you're
going
coming
after him
from.
for money. If she could put him in prison, she would, right?
But
That's not.
in this case, she did make a ton of money.
Yeah, but like that doesn't mean that she didn't get. Do you think that
But like,
victims should be compensated for being victimized?
do you think it's more
Yes.
likely that somebody would do that if they knew they were going to make a bunch of money, or do you think if like someone had no money, they would come forward? I think it's just more likely that you would
I
come.
think
You
that
would.
she still would have come forward if she could put him in the context of a prison, right? She would
With no
totally come
money.
forward. Yes, no money. She would come
Yeah,
forward. She
that's
was
what
a
you and I don't
millionaire.
know. We don't know if she would have came forward if there was no incentive involved.
Wait, by the way, she came forward in 2019. She didn't file in 2019.
What'd you say?
So,
Sorry, you broke up.
yeah, she didn't file against Trump until he defamed her. She
Okay,
came out
regardless of this,
in a
Parker,
book
I know
and
your view
accused
on
him,
this.
and she didn't come after him in terms of a lawsuit until he defamed her. The other person
I
she accused.
understand. I understand where you're coming from for this, but like, do you have any other like policy things? I just think this is a rabbit hole that you go down all the time with people because you like have a full belief in this,
Yeah, and
and
you
I
should too.
understand that.
And you should
Well,
too.
I
Like,
understand that
it's not
drives a
something you
lot
should
of people.
overlook. And I'll talk about the other things, but you should not overlook this. And you should continue to look into this. And you should do some research rather than just believing it's false just because Trump is involved and just because it's a famous person involved. Because that type of
I
reasoning
don't think
is.
just
Let me
because
please
it's
finish
Trump
this
and
point.
stuff,
Let me
it's
please
false.
finish this point. That's what you brought up. So again, I think that type of reasoning allows for people who are rich and who are famous and who have a lot of influence to get away with doing horrible things. Because people, for some reason, don't apply, right, the idea that if they were held civilly liable, that they would be guilty, right, when in every other
Do you think it
circumstance
goes
we would
both
say that they're
ways?
guilty.
Do you think it goes both ways though?
And what does that mean?
That like people that are famous get off, yes, but also like people try to take advantage of people with money.
That could happen, but it's a very small percentage of the cases,
Good.
right? If you look at the context of cases in terms of cases, just accusations, only 2 to 10% are false accusations, and this was a held civil liability.
Still
There was
false
a
though.
there,
You know
there
what
was
I
a
mean?
there was a unanimous decision of 9 people in a jury. What's the likelihood of someone being held liable by a unanimous decision of a jury of 9 people and it being wrong? Very low.
It just
Very,
depends.
very
Well, it
low.
depends in the context of how much publicity. This is why it's like jurors can't be swayed. Everybody knows who he is, though. So you can't really have, I believe, like people that don't know him at all. How can you even claim that to be true? If you live in America, you know who he is.
There were some people that didn't at the time, but like the point that of
I
that
just
being
don't
true, of
agree with
not
that
knowing
either.
about him is irrelevant. You're essentially
What
saying you
other
wouldn't. Can you
what
please
other
listen to
things do
me
you
for a
disagree
second?
with?
I'm trying to explain it to you right now. So you could just say this about any case that was brought against him. Just because he's known, just because he's famous, just because he's the president, means that he'll never be accountable for a crime ever. He's not a king. He's not above the rule of law. He deserves to be held accountable by the rule of law that unanimously determined that he and Carroll. And you overlooking that only harms victims. It only harms people who
If
specifically.
it was brought to you in a way where you found out that all of it was bias, would you change your mind? Or would you not because you just fully believe, like you have a really deep belief in this?
If there was evidence indicating that it was false, I would of course believe that if there was
Okay.
evidence, but there
Mhm.
isn't, and all the evidence is indicating that he's guilty. So given that there is evidence indicating he's guilty and there's no evidence indicating his innocence, why don't you consider him guilty?
Because I just think it's biased.
Okay, so do you see what I mean? Like if I did that, it would be biased, it would be screwed up of me. I'd be making the
What
country
would be?
worse off. But because you do it, it's okay?
What are you talking about?
Yeah, like you're saying you can just call it bias if it's against your person, but if I specifically had if I were to believe that he was
No, no,
guilty
no. I'm
even
not saying
without
just
the
because it's
evidence, then
Donald
I'm in the
Trump.
wait, if I were to believe he's guilty without evidence, would I be in the wrong?
If you believed he was guilty without evidence,
Would I be in the wrong?
if you believed he was guilty without evidence,
Would I be in the wrong?
I just think you can't make a fair opinion on this at all because you like they could tell you anything. You weren't there, and like I'm saying,
By the way,
media
you
in
can say that
general,
about every single criminal case.
every
You
single
weren't
thing
there.
ever.
I'm sorry. Here, for example, do you think that were guilty because you weren't there?
Okay, we're not going to go that route.
You
That's
weren't
crazy.
there. You weren't there. Do you
No, but
realize
I'm
how
saying,
dumb of
like,
an argument? I'm sorry, please.
you don't know the intention of people, and in
I'm
a lot of
sorry. I'm
cases-
sorry. You don't have to be there to know that they did it, right? We know that the did it.
I'm not
We
saying you
weren't
had to be
there,
there.
yet we
I'm
still
saying-
know they did it. We have evidence,
I'm
right?
talking about believing. I'm talking about like belief in things, right? So like how much of things could you be fed that aren't true?
That's what you're doing, though. Like you're saying it's not true.
Well, it could be on both sides, right?
Could be, but it's not
be.
because it is the case that we have evidence behind our position. I'm not just believing
What
this.
evidence
with-
did they have that you believe fully? What is the evidence that you believe, other than he said, she said?
So, by the way, when you say he said, she said, by the way, that's like a way that
I'm saying
people
in any
use.
case, right? In any case, right? What is the evidence they had there? DNA, like, did they have anything?
So there was DNA on a dress where Donald Trump had
Mhm.
multiple years to give up his DNA, but chose not to give up his DNA. He claimed he never met her, right? Which would mean that they don't have his DNA, and it would be the case that if he gave up his DNA, he could exonerate himself by saying that he was never at the scene of the crime, and there's no evidence that he was at the scene of the crime. But
So
he
there
chose
was never
not.
anything.
Hey, can you please listen? I'm still explaining. I'm in the middle of explaining, and I'm really trying here to explain all of these points for you, and it sounds like you're not trying to engage with it.
I am engaging, but you're saying the same thing for a while. Like, I'm just engaging also. I'm like,
This is new information. You're asking me the same question.
I said, was their DNA tested? And you said no, pretty much.
Listen, there was unidentified male DNA where Donald Trump could have given up his DNA for it to be tested, but the only way in which they could test his DNA is if he decided to give it up. If Donald Trump is the person he is, he's so egotistical, he's so narcissistic that if he had the ability to clear his name, he would do it immediately. He always does that, right?
How come there
So
wasn't a warrant for it?
Gonna go crazy.
Can I
It's
ask a question?
after I'm done speaking, but it's in a civil case, so there can't be. What you're saying for a warrant to get it would be in a criminal case, not a civil case. The reason why they couldn't go after that and force him to give up his DNA is because it was a civil case. And because there's different context in civil courts versus criminal courts that allows for you to mandate them give up their DNA to test it in a criminal court, but not mandating to give it up in a civil court. I believe he should have been mandated to give it up. And I believe that it would have shown that he was at the scene of the crime. Because if he was innocent, he would have given up his DNA within the time slot allotted, and he would have shown that it wasn't his DNA. But because he thought it could be his DNA, or it was his DNA, that it was the case that he decided to not give up his DNA. And to keep continuing to claim that he never met her, even though there's a picture of them together, and that he wouldn't have seen her because she's quote unquote not his type, but then in a deposition he mistook her with his ex-wife.
Okay, I hear your point. But I'm asking, like, what they had during that civil trial. Like, what was the evidence? Not, like, what didn't they have?
Well, I think
Like-
that's so let's be clear with what evidence is. Evidence is something that points towards the truth of something or indicates a
But did they
higher.
share that? Did they share? I want to know what they shared at the case. You're not answering my question. Like, what did they share to the jury?
I promise you, I'm getting to that. If you would
Okay.
like to just let me explain. Is that fine? I promise you
Mm-hmm.
I will get there. Okay? Evidence is just something that points towards something being true, increases the likelihood of something being true. So if there's a civil court determination where a unanimous decision of 9 people determine something to be true, not only would that serve as evidence because it increases the likelihood of something being true, but the evidence within the case we could also point to. The multiple friends she told at the time that corroborated the story that she specifically was a that there was a legitimate logical story for decades of this being true because she told them back then. We can point to the psychiatrist or psychologist that verified the trauma that she engaged in or that she had specifically at the court determination. There were the lies of Donald Trump. There were plenty of things we can point to, right, in terms of evidence, something that points towards the truth of this being true, right, or points towards the likelihood of this being true. Does it make sense?
Okay.
Those are just
So
a few things. There are other pieces of evidence in the case, but we're going to be sitting here for a long time if I go through every single
I
piece of
know.
evidence.
That's why I'm saying I just disagree with you.
Okay. Why? Did you look at the case? Did you know it? What piece of evidence in the case do you dispute? How about that?
A lot of things.
Such as?
A lot of things. I'm not wanting to talk about this. I would like to talk about different points. I mean, if this is your whole reason for not voting him and why you don't want people to vote for him, I get that.
No, it's not my
Is that
only
your
reason.
primary reason?
It should be a sufficient reason, but it's not my only reason. And by the way, like, just tell me what piece of evidence you can dispute, and then we can move on.
Well, I think we've been over a lot of things, and like you said, there's 100 things we could point out. We just disagree on them,
So just
on
give
like
me
the
one.
intent behind things. And
So just give me one. Just give me one piece of evidence in the case that you dispute.
intent,
Huh?
intention.
No, I said piece of evidence that was like submitted in the case.
Well, all of it then would be included.
Just give me one specific piece.
I just think that the intention years later alone says enough.
So you don't know a piece of evidence in the case that you dispute?
Yeah, a lot of it. I think telling your friends isn't really, that's biased. So I could tell my friends a ton of things and they would vouch for me. So you're like, that's evidence that she told her friends. Well, how are they a witness? Or like,
Oh, how about other victims that came out and talked about them being a Donald Trump?
and they were included and awarded money also during this?
They weren't awarded money, but they were a part of the process, right, in terms of the jury determination. They talked about their experiences being by Trump. What about the 26 other women that have accused Donald Trump of misconduct? Do you believe any of those women? Or are all of them lying? I can't hear you when you swipe out of the app. I can't hear you when you swipe out of the app. I still can't hear you, by the way. Seems like maybe she left. Oh, she literally did just leave. Yeah, that's crazy.